Shalom, this is Ladew Shore. Welcome back to Sweet and Good Torah. It's now Chol Moed Pesach, and this is our special Pesach edition of Sweet and Good Torah. And we're going to talk a little bit about the time of Pesach, of Passover. It comes in the spring every year, and the Torah calls it Chodesh Pesach, come every spring. So it's very interesting. We learned something very important about the power of this time of year. So a lot of people don't realize that Pesach is not just about commemorating some historical event. It's actually the time of year. It's actually the 15th of Nisan that has the spiritual energy that allows us to go out from bondage. It's actually the fact that it was this time of year of why we got taken out of Egypt, and not, oh, we got taken out of Egypt and now, we commemorate this historical event. It's actually the time, there's a spiritual energy in this time in Pesach. So something fascinating happened in 2018. No, not the future, but 2018 years after the creation of Adam Arishon, after Adam, Hashem made what's called a bris. He made a covenant, a treaty with Abraham Avinu, with Abraham. And that event, it's called the bris Bein HaBesarim, the treaty, the covenant between the parts, that changed the history of mankind. Because an infinite being that created all the world made a covenant with one man, and that his descendants will be this special holy nation. And Abraham says, Mayeda, how do I know? How do I know my ancestors, my descendants? How do I know my descendants, my children? How do I know that they will inherit the land of Israel? How do I know? No, they may, they may drift away from the Torah. They may do averos, chas v'shalom. Things, unfortunately, we've seen through thousands of years of Jewish history. We haven't always held the ultimate, ideal of keeping all the Torah. Not all of us have known all the Torah and performed all the mitzvahs perfectly, generation after generation. So Abraham asked, he said, how will I know that you'll give my children the land of Israel, ultimately, that all these promises you're making to me about the nation that's going to come from me, how do I know that's going to happen? And Hashem said something really fascinating. It says, I'm going to exile them. I'm going to exile your children, and then you know that they're going to inherit the land of Israel, and all these amazing things are going to happen because I'm going to exile them. It's like, what? What's going on? But Hashem says, I'm going to send them down to Mitzrayim. I'm going to send them down to Egypt. And then I'm going to exile them to Babylon, which is modern-day Iraq. I'm going to exile them to Persia, which is modern-day Iran. I'm going to exile them. The Greek exile, we were actually in the land of Israel, but the Greek Empire is going to rule the world. And now this final exile we've been in, the Gullus Edom, the exile of Edom, which has been going on for 2016 years. We're 2016 years in, and Mashiach's not here yet. So what's going on? But it's fascinating because this time, where we call it the Geula, this is the redemption, this is the time where we can go out of exile. And it's a special energy that's in the air in Chodesh Aviv. And what's fascinating is that Hashem sends the Shefa, the spiritual energy, through the higher spiritual worlds all the way down to our physical world. And the spiritual energy affects what's happening in the physical world. So we see that in this month of Chodesh Aviv, in this month where we celebrate Pesach, Passover, that there's a spiritual energy that comes into the world. And that spiritual energy we see physically. We see all the flowers begin to bloom. And we see the fruit begin to bloom on the tree. And we even make a special bracha, a special blessing on the trees for all the fruit that's starting to grow. And we see the time of potential that we can leave Mitzrayim, we can leave the Mitzarim, we can leave the bondage of what's holding us back. And all our desires for physicality are holding us back, but this is the time we can break free of our physical desires and awaken spiritually and get out of what's holding us back, what's enslaving us. We're enslaved to the physical desires. We can break out of that. And that's why we eat the matzah. We don't need this big physical, big bread. Not a bread of the gaiva. Not a bread of the gaiva, a lachma anya. A humble bread. The bread of affliction, the bread of poverty, the humble bread, the matzah, the flat matzah. And that breaks us out. So we see the spiritual energy by the beautiful blooming in the physical world. And it's a sign for us that this is the time of Geula. This is the time where we can break out of bondage of what's holding us back and just grow spiritually. So I wish you all a great Pesach, a great Chol Moed, and we'll talk more about Spiros Omer and the seventh day of Pesach and the splitting of the Yam Suf, the splitting of the Red Sea. Bizrat Hashem on Sweet and Good Torah. Stay tuned.